All right, hello. We are the Castle of Horror podcast. This is the first time we've ever actually attempted to do a live version of this show. We've been doing a weekly version of the Castle of Horror podcast for the past 4 years. You now find us on bleedingcool.com. What we tend to do is retrospective. So, for instance, we'll have like the Evil Baby retrospective and do every movie we can find about evil babies, that exist or at least are worth talking about. We spend one episode at a time covering one movie. So this month we've been covering Wes Craven because, of course, we just lost him very recently. And so tonight we're going to be discussing the original 1984 A Nightmare on Elm Street. So before we get started, or as we get started, I'm going to introduce the panel. It's very odd to be doing this live, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Welcome to the Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. My name is Jason Henderson. I live here in Denver, Colorado. With me from Austin, Texas, is Mr. Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and also co-creator of the comics Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Also with me from Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, creator of Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew. Hello, baby. Mr. Tony, I didn't even allow you to say hello. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. You guys are awesome. Thanks also for having us at the con. It is weird kind of doing it live. Like, we're usually just talking over the phone. So this is really cool. Thanks again.
It's really weird doing this with clothes on, I have to say.
Yes. Most of us are at least half dressed. It is, you're absolutely right. It's not required. For those listening. Okay, and also with us in Denver is attorney Miss Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. You're actually looking very
Dead.
What is the meeting? Is this a Day of the Dead thing?
Day of the Dead, yeah.
Outstanding.
Just
Okay.
tomorrow.
Very cool. Day of the Dead. Outstanding. All right.
Good point.
Okay. According to Wikipedia, and this is the way we always introduce the show, what we'll do is we'll talk about the movie, we'll talk about some trends in it, and then if you guys have questions or observations or anything, we would love to hear from you. And once again, if you're looking for the show, you can always find it on iTunes and bleedingcool.com. All right, A Nightmare on Elm Street, for those of you who don't remember, is, according to Wikipedia, a 1984 American supernatural slasher horror film written and directed by Wes Craven. And of course, it launched the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And it starred Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, Renee Blakely, Amanda Weiss, Robert Englund, and of course, the first major appearance of Johnny Depp. So, and it's very interesting to try to talk about this movie as though you've never seen it before. But that's what we all attempted to do when we watched it at, I think, like 3 o'clock in the morning last night. And because everybody just crowded onto my couch and a big air mattress and just watched A Nightmare on Elm Street.
It was like a horror movie. It's like a horror movie slumber party.
It
like
really
the first
was.
time, because I hadn't seen Jason in like a couple of years since he moved from Austin. So that was really cool to finally like watch the movie. Usually we watch it in our daily lives and then just all convene online.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. The first annual Nightmare on Elm Street slumber party. So
Yeah.
And yet, oddly, nobody had any Freddy Krueger-themed nightmares that night. I'm slightly disappointed by that.
And everyone was clothed, so it's hard
Yeah.
to just point about that.
Speak for yourself. Okay. So one thing that occurred to us that we wanted to bring up was Nightmare on Elm Street comes around in 1984. And Tony, I think this was your observation at first, is if you consider Halloween from John Carpenter comes around in 1978, Friday the 13th comes around in 1980, Nightmare comes in 1984. And the way that teenagers behave and act is very different in Nightmare on Elm Street from the way they did in those two prior movies, with Halloween just 6 years before that. Tony, do you want to share a little bit more about that observation?
yeah, we all watch the movie again and we make notes and we talk about it. But one thing that always has struck me and why I think Nightmare became the phenomenon that it did was because these are teens that were like our age when it came out, for one thing. They're very suburban, whereas, you could say that about Halloween, but the way it's presented is like different than the people, we show them at high school. We, even more so, it's not just outside of high school. You see them in high school, you see them in the boiler room, you see them, being teenagers and doing more teenage suburban things. They're also the difference is that these are teenagers who really, like, the adults are useless in this movie.
Yeah.
And these are teenagers who are kind of like you want to take charge and you want to, like, defeat Freddy and, you know, by any means possible. And they're really, like, the bastion. They've been inflicted by this thing.
Yes.
They don't know that at the beginning, but they've been inflicted by this thing, and they have to band together and take care of themselves. It's different than, like, being at a camp and being kind of cannon fodder, or even being stalked by your brother in Halloween. It's a different kind of stalking, and it's a different kind of slasher movie than we'd kind of seen. This is a horror generation ahead of each of those, and how we see that progress, and then, eventually we move on to Scream, etc. This is like a new landmark, I think.
Your suggestion is that 6 years represents an entire teen generation of moviegoing.
Yeah, because when we saw this, even if we saw it on VHS, we saw it as, the movies you tend to like are the ones like maybe you saw it in junior high, and then high school is your kind of movie thing. The Halloween, it may have been like your older brothers or sisters or cousins had seen Halloween. So when you came into this, it's like, this is my horror. And then again, like later on, you'll have Scream, and that's somebody else's horror, and on and on and on. But this was like our horror movie and our teens that we associated with, down to terrible haircuts and pastel clothes and chaste khaki pants for girls.
Well, I think another thing that's very different about the teenagers in this movie is it was very well cast. Like, they actually, I don't know how old all the people are in the movie, but they actually cast teenagers that look like teenagers as opposed to people who look like they're pushing 30.
Right.
Yeah, Heather said she was 18 or 19, and I'm sure Johnny Depp he looks like he's probably 17 or 18. Johnny Depp actually wasn't the first choice. He came in, or rather, he wasn't auditioning. He came in to keep his friend company, and his friend actually ended up playing Freddy in the remake in 2010.
You're talking about Jackie Earle Haley.
Yeah. He was keeping him company. Haley didn't get a part, and then Johnny Depp, Wes Craven was like, "What about you? Come talk," because the director, I guess just Wes Craven's daughter, his assistant director's daughter, said he was beautiful, which I completely concur with. That's why they did that. So
What's so weird is I had such a man crush on Jackie Earle Haley in like the 70s with Bad News Bears Breaking Training. I mean, this is like this.
He was the coolest.
Really, Jason?
No, it was
You had a man crush on Rorschach.
Jackie Earle Haley was the coolest teen that there ever was because he rode a dirt bike and had like shoulder-length hair.
I have a girl crush. I mean, a girl, guy, whatever, appropriate crush on Johnny Depp. Appropriate heterosexual crush on Johnny Depp.
My love for Jackie Earle Haley is completely appropriate.
He's your Bad News Bear.
What actually really amazed me, though, here about the teen series, if you think of Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween in 1978, Jamie Lee Curtis is reactive, and she's very brave, and she pokes Michael in the eye, and she tells the teens to run across the street. But and that movie does play out almost in real time, so it's not completely a fair comparison. But here, Heather Langenkamp, she makes plans right away. The moment she figures out that this entity is able to jump into her dreams, the character immediately starts deciding, hey, I'm going to try to figure out a way to drag this guy out. And she starts trying to get Johnny Depp involved in it. And that is very different.
Although Johnny Depp's kind of useless.
Yeah.
No, he is.
Let's be fair. Like, this is not
the character of Johnny Depp, not actual Johnny Depp.
Well, I've never met the man. But, I can't... If Freddy Krueger was after me, I don't think I would call him Johnny Depp.
But Tony observed, actually, he was saying that the teens here, the adults are useless, the teens are the ones who have the answers. Although, actually, I was thinking there are some prerequisites to that. I mean, Steve McQueen in 1958 in The Blob, Steve McQueen runs a gang. The gang knows there's a monster out there. The cops won't listen to Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen has to get the answers together and go even down to saving a dog from a grocery store. Steve McQueen has all the answers, and the cops are useless. So that was that was a common that was a motif. But I agree, the teens are a lot stupider well, some of them in Halloween, definitely in Friday the 13th. Okay. The next question that I'd had is, what exactly is Freddy? Is he a ghost? Is he a demon? I mean, in this first movie, ignore what you know about the rest of the series. 1984, what is Freddy?
I say ghost. Although, you can make a strong argument towards demon, I guess.
Go ahead.
I think he's less ghost and more like. I think the best you classify him is like entity. Like he's not a demon the way you would think of, but he's more than a ghost. Like he can terrorize more than any ghost you've seen. Kind of usually, ghost is more like an apparition, and even though they can like you have the haunting, the ghosts are doing things. They're doing really scary things, but he attacks with like a malevolence that a lot of ghosts don't. So I think he's more of an entity, and he's a revenge entity as well.
Well, that's kind of the thing that I think sets Freddy Krueger apart from Michael Myers and Jason, who are kind of all business, and it doesn't really seem personal. Freddy Krueger is a sadist. Like you would talk, he's probably the biggest asshole in terms of film villainy. Like he really just wants to, more than just killing you, he wants to torment you.
Oh, he loves his job.
Yeah,
like, Freddy loves his job. He is really like the glee with which Freddy like does the things he does is amazing, and that's I got to give it up for Robert Englund.
Yeah,
that's why he became a
Robert
franchise, right? Like that's why he became a franchise. Is Freddy really likes what he's doing? Like being a sadist is he laughs and he's like posing, and he has this whole theatrical thing. You'll get stalked by Jason and Michael, but Freddy's gonna be like, oh, and hey, he may even like toy with you a little bit more, like more theatrical at least than either of the others. And he has a whole bag of tricks though. I mean, he's in a dream; he can kind of do what he wants, but he really takes advantage of that. Also, he's a revenge ghost in a way where most revenge ghosts are like something has been done wrong to them in a moral standpoint. But the morality is that parents took care of him. He's revenge. He was a bad person before this.
Yeah.
Like, terrible. He's a pedophile and a child murderer.
Yeah,
and yet he still gets to come back.
They actually avoided calling him a child molester because there was a string of child molester incidents in the area that year. So they decided to steer clear of the child molester thing and call him a child murderer.
How is murdering kids any bit like that? Makes no sense to me. Hollywood, get your shit together.
No, that's true. I really think that's so funny to think that Wes Craven, who made Last House on the Left, is at that point very, very interested in winning favor and not offending people that much. But so they refer to him as a child murderer. I love the observation that you just made about that. Typically, when there is a ghost who's getting revenge on people in any given story, it's because you're going to unlock the mystery of what happened to this person, and like in Bag of Bones or something like that. And that's very typical. You find out bad guys did something bad to this ghost. Now the ghost is back and wants revenge and is maybe torturing and doing terrible things, but it's because a great injustice was done. This movie completely flips that on its head.
Kind of. I mean, that's the idea that it's an injustice because he is killed by these parents, vigilante parents, who, according to cut scenes, by the way, that parents actually had, like, Heather actually has a sibling that was killed by him. But anyway, so they kill him, which in our fairy tale mentality is justice, because you throw the witch into the oven. But in our actual society of, law, legal and whatever the word is I'm looking for.
I don't know.
Legally
You're the
upstanding.
attorney, so.
Yeah, I know. As I'm saying, theoretically, you're supposed to convict the person and put them to death in that way. And that didn't work out in this case because of a technicality. What was it? That a search warrant technicality. Yeah. So it's okay that the parents killed him, which I'm sure he doesn't agree that that's actually okay.
But it's not made clear in this movie. It's totally not made clear in the original 1984 Nightmare that, for instance, that Freddy wants to get revenge on these parents in particular. It's a little fuzzy as to whether he's trying to get revenge for being killed. It seems like he's just taken on new powers and he goes on killing.
Well, I mean, I guess it's unsaid, but I mean, it's very specific. Like, I mean, the mom has his claw.
Yes.
It's targeted. There's no doubt about that.
I just have to say, he wants revenge because they burnt it. It seems like he made out all right on this deal. I mean, can we all agree with that? Now he's like this supernatural dream master. He can go on murdering people at his leisure, which is what he liked to do in life. So, really, he should be thanking the parents for torturing him, right? Right? Am I right?
Except we don't quite know what happens after he gets all of his revenge. Like, that's never broached either. Like,
does he get to throw the dream demon kegger or something? I mean,
we don't know what he does. But I also got to, we've done a lot of horror and metal, and the other thing I got to do is this time around I got to introduce Jason to Twisted Sister's Horror Terria, which has two songs Captain Howdy and Street Justice. And Street Justice is like, I was like, there's a song, it's pretty much the theme song for the parents, and it's Twisted Sister's Street Justice. And Jason was like, oh yeah, I guess so. But every time it comes to that part in the movie, that's what I think of when I think of that. And it's pretty much that.
It's very strange, this moment in the film when Heather's mom says, okay, let me sit you down and for a moment of lucidity, because she's always drunk. But in just this moment, I'm going to tell you this.
Smoking at that point.
Yes, right. She says, okay, just so you know, there was this child murderer, and we burned him up for various totally logical reasons that I promise you'll agree with. And it's very strange. It's not clear how long ago it was. I mean, this movie, for considering how important this movie is, there's all kinds of fuzziness to it.
Well, she says us parents.
Us parents.
So
this woman is like 40 years old.
And if this person, if in fact, like the cutscene says, Nancy has a sibling, then it would have been a year or two before Nancy was born, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That's what that probably was.
So it's very recent, but that's what's very dreamlike and fairy tale-like about it, is that, when you think of the years don't seem to make all that much sense necessarily in the version you're looking at. It doesn't even matter. It's just in the past.
Speaking of revenge and Freddy, the reason that he's called Fred Krueger is because Wes Craven had a bully in his school that was called Fred Krueger, so he named him after that.
Don't piss off creatives; they'll get revenge forever.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is the fuzziness of the logic does kind of hold up, because if you get to the end of the movie, the entire movie might be a dream. So if you're looking at if it's dream logic, which I'm opening up a big can of worms, admittedly.
This movie has no ending.
The movie doesn't end because you don't wake up. But
crazy that there's no ending to this movie.
There actually was a happy ending that Wes Craven wanted, and the producer is the one who said, no, let's leave it open for sequels. So go ahead and make him be not dead at the end. So there's actually four endings that were filmed, and that's the one they ended up with.
I'm fine because we got a franchise out of it.
Can someone please describe the ending?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, we always preface it by saying, these are spoilers, of course.
Yeah.
But
although you've all seen Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
I'm guessing at the horror comp.
Yeah,
I think the time for that's been. So we think that everything's great. Things have ended kind of abruptly. They turn away from Freddy. We think he's going away. Everything's nice, and it's a fairy tale ending. They get in the car. The Freddy top comes over. The car drives off seemingly by itself. They can't control it, and Freddy drags the mom through the window, which always reminds me a little bit of Phantasm, a little bit of like when Goldfinger gets pulled out.
Yes.
in Goldfinger at the
she gets sucked through
the front door window with the claws.
The convertible top closing as quickly as it did was a surprise to all the actors. So when you see them going,
oh, that's the best.
It actually was.
That's awesome.
It actually was not expected to just go slam.
Which I kind of like. I still kind of like this dreamlike ending.
You're still in a dream.
Yeah, you're still
that means
in a dream.
the movie ends with her still dreaming.
Possibly.
In regards to what Tony was saying, getting the franchise out of it, you can't hardly blame the producers, because as of a few years ago, they're still making Freddy Krueger movies. Like they got their mileage out of that. They got their pound of charbroiled pedo flesh.
And up until that movie, New Line Cinema was going bankrupt, and then they made money on this, so they called it the house that Freddy built.
Yeah, and again, before this, our last one was Shocker, which tried to be a franchise, but again, felt like it tried a little too hard in some ways in the screenplay.
Yeah.
And so having this kind of be more organic of like, maybe it will be a franchise, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the ending. I'm fine with that.
I think you could have gotten all of that without this. I love this movie. I really like this movie a lot, but I think that movie is really disappointing. Because traditionally you get to Act 3. Act 3 resolves, and you know more or less what's going to happen. Maybe you have a cliffhanger, but this is not a cliffhanger. This is just not an ending. We're still basically somewhere in Act 3, and they've just not given us. There's no closure, and maybe that's intended. Maybe that's Wes Craven being a master of horror, and he wants to disarm us.
You know what? We have an audience here for the first time.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have the ability to walk down the. How many of you have watched Nightmare on Elm Street recently? All right, I'm gonna do something we can't do on the podcast.
You're going in the audience like
I'm
Phil
going
Donahue.
into the audience. I'm in the chat room. What do you think about the ending of Nightmare on Elm Street, sir?
I think it's great. Why do they have to have like the traditional beginning, middle, and end?
Yeah.
Launch it in, launch the new genre.
Yeah.
That's an astute. He's right. It's like, Jason, who the hell do you think you are telling Wes Craven he has to have an ending? You're right. No, that's a good point.
You're no Wes Craven.
All right, how about you, man?
I haven't seen the recent one. I was in the old days.
This is the old one. We're talking about the original.
Original.
Yeah, we're talking about the original.
So no problems with the ending. No problems with it.
No. It was perfect.
All right.
Anybody else wanna put him in his place?
You guys?
Looks like you're outvoted.
Okay, so I'm
Democracy in action.
Street justice.
Street justice.
I love that it keeps coming back to Twisted Sister.
We're not going to take it, Jason.
All right. So there's one other thing that I wanted to call out. I'd like to just call out interesting things that you might think of that people might not remember. For me, you might want to talk about Freddie, you might want to talk about whatever. For me, it was the fact that this thing was filmed in so many beautiful places in California, but especially Venice Beach, which is a very romantic place. I was actually there recently with a totally non-romantic friend. I don't know why.
We're married, by the way.
I don't know why I oversold that. That actually was just. But anyway, you walk on Venice Beach, and there's these little, beautiful little footbridges and everything. It is so not Ohio. I'm unaware of the Venetian, canals of Cleveland that supposedly Heather and Johnny Depp are,
And the palm trees.
are at.
Yeah.
So that's what I would look out for: is the beautiful palm trees and
Of
Well,
Ohio.
it's a dream.
Yeah.
It's
It
dream,
is
dream
the whole
logic.
movie.
Dream logic.
Yeah, now that you have no ending, the whole movie is a dream.
If Freddy Krueger wants palm trees, he has fucking palm trees. All right.
No, true.
So Freddy Krueger's like California dreaming the whole time.
Yeah.
If I could only sadistically murder people, I'm stuck in Ohio.
That's good.
I can't believe you just did
No,
that.
I was good. I was good. It was good.
If I'm sadistically murdering children, it might as well be nice out with palm trees. That's great.
Okay, let me. Can I
Yeah.
go?
Go.
All right. I think that one of the coolest things is it's one of the first movies, not the first movie, to use the rotating room trick where somebody looks like they're crawling. I don't know if the Exorcist might have, but anyway, it's not. It wasn't common yet, and they used it in this one scene where this woman gets dragged up, and she's getting killed on the ceiling, but you can see in the foreground the boyfriend just sitting there watching and just kind of wondering. I was thinking, how did they do that? And I looked it up, and he is upside down. He's actually in the rotating room, and he's strapped into the chair.
Whoa.
And they've pasted his hair down, so he's upside down, and she's lying on the floor. But then they flipped it so that she looks like it's on the ceiling. That trick is really cool. And then they use the same rotating room for a scene when Johnny Depp's character gets killed, and there's a geyser of blood. They just put it upside down so that the bed is, they're just dumping blood through the hole in the bed. But when they flipped it back around, they went the wrong way. And so all the blood the first time fried all their camera equipment.
Oh, yeah.
And the power went out. And Wes Craven called it a Ferris wheel from hell. I thought that was a really neat trick. There's some neat tricks.
You must be this
It's
tall
really
to ride.
effective. And it's interesting. What I like watching it again, and I could watch Nightmare a million times. One thing I like about it is watching it and trying to put myself in the mindset of seeing it for the first time. You got this movie that, because it's hard to do because afterwards you've got a franchise. You've got Halloween costumes that say, Nightmare, on them the typical 80s ones where it's just a smock and a mask.
Yes.
That's a thing, and everybody wanted. Kids were taping butter knives to gardening gloves in the whole 9 yards. But we live in a world at this moment when there wasn't Freddy. This was new, and the glee with which he does things, the theatricality of it, weird symbolism stuff that comes up. You have this. At the beginning, you have a lamb. It's like lamb to the slaughter kind of thing that just shows up and then goes away, and it's these footnotes in it. And Craven, regardless of what you think about later movies, this is really there's tons of great horror gags. The phone gag where it's a tongue coming out of the phone. His arms stretching. which were even better than like the Roger Corman plastic arms in that Roger
And
Corman
Fantastic
Fantastic
Four.
Four. Like this is so much, and it was so creepy because it also attacked. Like I said, the teenagers that we were. This was like in our homes.
And
Like,
the
and you
arms?
can't escape. Like, no, you can't run and escape
Yeah.
this person. In fact, when you try, the stairs may give way, or any numerous.
Yeah, she steps into
You may end up in
steps
the boiler
and-
room. All of that. The fact that even though all the like zombies with Jason, with Michael, you could still maybe get away. There's none of that.
She steps walking in the stairs, and it's like quicksand. It's actually like oatmeal or something. But she's stepping into the stairs. It's the coolest effect. That she just can't even go up the stairs. And then when his arms stretch out, it's like fishing rods, I think is what they end up using. But his arms stretch, so he doesn't have to catch up with her. He can just catch her with his giant stretchy arms.
One of the things that I really think is one of the reasons why the Freddy character has endured where a lot of other horror characters kind of go to the wayside is he, as the destroyer of innocence, the destroyer of children, he's also the destroyer of our future. You know, he was going after Generation X and cutting them to pieces. And, you know, you can't, which is why you couldn't, when you're talking about Shocker, you can't recreate that because it's too abstract, it's too mythological.
Yeah, and he's destroying. I mean, the one place where you feel safe is in your bed at night, tucked in to sleep, and it's like he's destroying any idea that you might have, any notion that you might have that you're ever safe anywhere.
And the only way that you can stop that is to put yourself in a really terrible state of not sleeping, and you can't do that. Like, we physically can't do that for too long. Like they say in the show, 11 days, but I think it's
crazy.
It's more like 5 before you really things are really bad.
Do you know where he got the idea for that, Wes Craven? It's from these articles that he was read in the LA Times about these guys who had escaped Pol Pot, these Southeast Asian refugees. They actually were these young, fit, healthy people who there was 3 guys within a few days of each other of coming here. They fell asleep, had nightmares, woke up, decided they were not going back to sleep again, and when they finally did go back to sleep, woke up screaming and died, and there's no cause for it. So he was so fascinated by that story that he's like, "This is a really
It is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty tremendous.
I mean, not awesome for them, of course.
No.
But it did make a pretty amazing story that became
story.
fairly legendary. At least for the people here. So all our people.
I should ask for final thoughts, and then I think it would be fun. We have a couple people here, right? So to get questions. So, all right, final thoughts. Nightmare on Elm Street. It was very strange to watch this from the beginning and see it as though I had not seen any others. It was interesting to see how sadistic Freddy was, his physicality, and he's really this very physical actor, Robert Englund. So it's definitely worth going back and taking a fresh look at it. And I'm glad that we got a chance to discuss it. It was a perfect one to wrap up our Wes Craven retrospective, which again you can pick up on iTunes or bleedingcool.com. Drew?
I just got a kick out of being able, first of all, to watch it, all of us in one room, which never happens, and then revisit, because I've watched a lot of the sequels, and I watched the remake recently, but go back to the original, the sort of genesis of this generational nightmare that is Freddy Krueger, with fresh eyes, because it had been a few years since I've seen it, was really awesome. And the intelligence of Craven, the bravery and the acting of Robert Englund, and it's a wonderful film. It's endured this many years. I think it's going to be around for years. It's a true classic. I mean, it's a classic that came out in my lifetime and a lot of people's lifetime. And I just love this movie, and it was great to be able to talk about this, and very very interesting to be able to talk about it in a room full of not only horror movie fans but horror movie actors.
Yeah.
We got Debbie Rochon, we have Joe Bob Briggs, we have Leatherface over here. Come on. That's insane. Happy Halloween. It doesn't get any better than that.
Absolutely.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Of course. I'm not the hugest fan of this movie because I'm not a big fan of Freddy, like the mask and all that. That's my thing. But what I like about it is seeing the practical effects and the fact that they actually are creative and they're using these ingenious ideas. Like there's a scene where Freddy just kind of stretches through this fabric, and you just see the imprint of his face and his hands.
Yeah, it comes
It's
through
just
the wall.
It's just fabric. Yeah, it's just fabric over a hole in the wall over a bed. Great effect, and you don't need some kind of CGI special thing.
You could do that for $90. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
and a little more expensive is that they built a bathroom set over a swimming pool so that she gets pulled under the bathtub, and now she's in the swimming pool. It's actually a stunt woman. But those kind of things, and like I was talking about the rotating room, those are great effects, and they're ingenious, they're creative. It's not just somebody at a computer, just messing with reality. So I just like that. That's what I like.
I don't want to interject, but having watched the remake recently, they try to recreate some of those, particularly the one where he presses his face through the wall, and I can tell you, not as effective when done as a digital effect.
And back to that, and we've talked about it a bunch of times on the podcast. I work in digital effects. I work on a show, like an animated show. I've been a 3D animator for video games. I still like the 3D is a good tool for budgetary, but when you see what they had to create for the budget and what they had at the time, and it blows away pure CG stuff. Like you can CG rotate the room, or you can try. Like CG blood is always awful.
Yeah.
And it's painful when they use it. It takes me out of it. But like the effects and the care and the love. Also, Robert Englund around the same time, he's in V as a super mousy alien guy.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
to see him like be this, super mousy alien guy, and all of a sudden he's larger than life, like, literally sometimes with long arms and like being this like, physical, character and having such joy and the joy of his sadism. Like, there's a reason why he's a franchise. Now, eventually kind of got mired in the one-liners and stuff like that. He kind of became the Crypt Keeper. But at the time, like, that was a new thing. A speaking malevolence that, could attack you from anywhere. It's amazing. And there's a reason why this has endured when maybe other characters and other movies haven't so much. All the iconography, some of the nihilism that we, like, growing up in the 80s, where, we were told at any point you could blow up. Or,
Yes.
like, that
Getting
kind of,
by
like,
a bed.
yeah, you may not ever wake up. You may not wake up. We saw the day after, and everything got destroyed, and there was punk, and that was about that too. Like all of that stuff was woven into the fabric of what this movie is, and that's lightning in a bottle. The best thing is still like do what they did, and create something that's purely horror, as opposed to like if I do X, Y, and Z, I think we can make a franchise. Because like I said, we watched that with Shocker, and like I love Shocker as a movie, but the idea of creating something very specifically, that's hard to do. Yeah, to be an icon. Yeah, it can work, but it's not nearly as organic as this. And I was really happy we got to see it together. First time we've ever watched the movies together, and then I'm super excited as well. So do we do Q&A, or are we doing endorsements like we normally
Jason
do?
hasn't done his final thoughts yet.
No, I did.
Oh,
I
you
started.
did?
I started
Okay.
with mine. Actually, well, we should ask. Are there any questions? Do we have? So? Do you? Those of you who are there. Do you have any questions, thoughts, observations about Nightmare on Elm Street? Yes. Wait, he's going to throw you a mic.
Thanks. I remember long ago seeing it in a movie theater and really thought it was like one of the scariest movies. I guess like the Halloween and the Friday the 13th were just like chasers and stuff. But I thought it was really frightening. But nowadays, like a lot of my friends don't go to movies; they watch it on Netflix or something. Have any comments or thoughts about like the experience on the big screen versus what
I-
you really miss out on? That would have been frightening.
Yeah, I personally, I'm lucky enough, and we have one in Denver now, but in Austin we have the Alamo Draft House, and I've luckily been able to see a lot of these in 35 millimeter because they care about that. They have good projectionists, and Tim, the owner, that was one of his things. I've seen like all the Phantasm movies in 35 millimeter, stuff like that, where I really, that's a thing, and I always try to do that. It's harder to do now. It's hard, like, the older you are, the harder it is to get out to the movies, and you have life stuff and everything. I think it's just, like, it'll never be quite the same, seeing it in, like, on the big screen writ large, especially horror. There's a few that I've seen where I'm like, I can watch them on the small screen. But I personally prefer, Like, that's the way it was supposed to be. I think it's great that we have Netflix. Like, at any given time, I can go to this. There was a thing about how Netflix is killing horror, blah, 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 like recently an article. And I'm like, I don't know. In some ways, yes, but like I can go to Tubi TV, to OB Guide, to anything on my Roku, PubD Hub. I can see older movies, like all this stuff. And I can watch all this instantly. Oh, wow. Awesome. Amazing. That's so cool. Like,
So, Bob Elmore, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, he wants to say a few words.
Please.
oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
I was listening to your conversation, and you're talking about practical effects, and from going from practical effects to CGI. Now it's going back again because of the sophistication of the audience. You know, they can tell when you get your ass kicked, you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
And from experiencing that myself on all kinds of stuff, and working in CGI, and back again, you can tell the audience is getting a lot better. The education that they're getting from people like yourselves who are telling people about what they need to know. And I love your comments and stuff. That movie scared the crap out of me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I've worked with Robert England, a great guy. We did Married with Children episodes together way back when.
That's awesome.
I'm a Pink Lady. That's a famous episode.
Yeah.
But he, a great actor, really nice guy. But when you mentioned that, I kind of hit a little point with me. I really appreciate that.
He's so physical. I mean, there's a point where when you first see him, he's actually leaned over like this, and there's like an almost balletic physicality that Robert Englund brings to that role. I mean, he's really an interesting actor,
We had to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't produce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything that you did back in the 80s, it was real.
Yeah.
When they strung you up, they strung you up.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't kill you, but you were on wires, but you were on wires.
I was going to say nothing ages like CG. In other words, like if I look at, let's say I take a movie that came out 10 years ago and features CG sharks, and then I look at a 30-year-old movie with a mechanical shark, believe me, the mechanical shark looks better than the 10-year-old CG shark.
Absolutely.
I totally agree.
Thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thanks for your contribution to all of our nightmares. That's amazing. Yeah, wow. I mean,
Michael
I
Myers from the Raw.
personally am like,
Questions?
like I said, working in CG, that's part. Like I have friends who just nothing CG can be good for them, and I think that's kind of not as good because there's some things where you enhance. There's great digital matte paintings. I miss matte paintings like when I see the extras in the Thing DVD and the lost art of that matte painting. As an artist, it hurts me. Like I want that to always be there. That's the way the world is, whatever. But replacing all of it with CG just because supposedly it's cheaper, which a lot of times it's not even. Like you still have to pay all those people if you want to look good. And nothing takes me out of a movie. And again, being an animator, I have to watch that. So when I see bad CG, to me, that's like a thumb in the eye. It's terrible.
Can I try?
Yeah.
I wanted to try and give an answer to the gentleman's question, actually, about watching horror on TV. Now, me personally, I came up well before the streaming era, right? But to me, watching Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, at the 10 p.m. show after the news went over when I was a kid, I remember it literally was Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed and watching it on this color TV that my grandparents had. My grandpa was out on a trip, and he comes in at the middle of the night just as, like, some crazy gore scene is happening with Peter Cushing. It scared the crap out of me. And I think multiple generations kind of grew up watching horror for the first time on the TV set. I mean, that's something that's been around. That's been a phenomenon in America since the 50s. So I am actually totally happy about more horror coming to our home screens. Personally.
I want to weigh in on that a little bit because I'm 37 and so I born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and my real love with horror above all is the Universal monsters, and I had no option of seeing those movies when they were brand new. They were made generations before I was even born, but because of home video, I was able to discover all those movies and the worlds within those movies through home video. Now, it's not, I will say, it is not the same as seeing a movie on the big screen. You cannot recreate that darkened theater. And I think when you're watching a horror movie in a group, there is that sort of group hypnosis that takes hold, and you're able to be more frightened more easily. It's that campfire effect.
Maybe, but I mean, but if you've got all your friends at home and a slumber party and you're watching,
but it's different because you're more likely to psych each other up. And we were even doing that last night. It's like, you asshole! What are you doing? What do you think you're doing? Don't do that. That's so stupid. Whereas in a movie theater, you're more inner.
So yeah, no, I actually believe, at least since the 50s, the TV has been a fantastic way to discover horror film. The other weird thing that is different now in the age of streaming is familiarity. Because it used to be you would watch, like, Nightmare on Elm Street even is too late. Let's say you watch something like The Flesh Eaters, from the early 60s, or, Sardonicus. You're not going to see that thing again for another 10 years until some crazy reason you may catch it at night at BU or something. And so all you have is your memory and maybe whatever you read in some monster magazine or book. Whereas now, I can discover an old movie like The Flesh Eaters or The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and I can watch it today, and I can watch it again tomorrow, and I can actually know what it's like.
Right.
I think that's also a reason why some of these characters endure, because generations will find them in their own way.
I agree. No. Yeah, and I grew up with monster theater. Like every Saturday was monster theater, and one of the scariest things, there was a BBC Dracula that I was like 4, and for some reason when they go to stab Dracula, and he's, I think it was one of the brides, and she screams, I ran and hid in the bathroom. Like, I was like, that was nothing scary, and I think that was originally made for TV.
Are you talking about the Louis Jourdan Dracula?
Maybe. It was on PBS when I was in Kerrville.
It's probably
Texas.
Louis Jourdan.
Yeah, it was scared the crap out of me. And there's all these things where you were discovering, like, I would watch, Frankenstein movies, Dracula movies, all this stuff. Where every Saturday that was my, it was a big deal if I missed that.
Yeah.
And so most of us discovered horror through TV. My parents weren't going to take me to that.
No.
Maybe they would take me to a Universal, but you had to see that in retrospective.
Yeah.
And I think, is TV killing horror? It may kill some newer stuff because of the way it's approached, but horror's gonna endure. We've been telling scary stories by the campfire for a really long time. It's like the whole "is rock and roll dead?" Like, it's very clickbaity. Like, come on, But I think there's all these channels now. I could watch horror movies right now. The moment I come home from work, I can watch it streaming at work if they let me. If I have a second monitor and they still let me do my job, which actually people stream stuff all the time at my work, so that's fine. But I could watch horror movies for as long as I'm awake right now. When we were growing up, that wasn't a thing. So,
absolutely.
Is it killing it?
I just don't believe
know.
it.
I think it's gonna. I think horror will do just fine. Well, we're here at this, so obviously, I think it's doing okay.
Yeah. So did we have any other questions? Any other questions, observations, thoughts?
So we got about 10 more minutes, I think, before they.
Well, we can call it, but I should ask you guys.
Yeah,
We usually do endorsements, and so
stuff.
if you tune into our show, and once again, Jason Henderson and I write the Alex Van Helsing novels for HarperCollins. Tony Salvaggio of Deserts of Mars, and currently working on. I think I can say this in the middle of a show. Currently working on Ruby, the animated series for Rooster Teeth. Julia Guzman, attorney and
color
commentary. Drew Edwards, creator of the long-running comic.
15 years today.
Yeah.
Today.
He has
15 years old.
Booth over there.
Yeah.
Go visit me in the catacombs, buy comics, consumer. Halloween Man.
Absolutely. And so normally we go through all of this and then we wrap up with endorsements, whatever it is that we're reading, watching, wanting to share with people. So Tony, lay it on us.
So first and foremost, I don't think he's still here, but I would like, if you have any kind of anything to raise, I personally, and I hope this isn't too fanboy, I got to meet Basil Gogos today, who's been the illustrations of horror movies for as long as I can remember, and I want to say, raise a toast, raise your hand. And
Yeah.
that was an amazing moment for me, just because like one of the people that made me want to become an artist. Like when you see his work, you stop and you look at it, you ingest it, you pour over it. And not every illustrator is that way. And I know that's, I apologize, that's kind of fanboyish, but that was my moment, like, today of, like, holy moly. And, all the actors and actresses here and people that we watched and have been part of our show, at least tangentially, in the fact that they stuck with us and definitely have been part of our lives. Like, and thanks again to, the HorrorCon for having us. This is, I haven't seen Jason in, like, 2 years, since he moved to Denver from Austin. And we are co-writers of comics, and so, like, kind of having a reunion show or getting the band back together, like, live, this has been really, really cool. I guess my endorsement would be to, visit all the artists who are here and share your stories. Like, that's one thing we have collectively. We're here for stories.
Yeah.
Some of them scare us. A lot of them stick with us. Like, share those together, I guess. That would be my thing, because that's why we're here.
Awesome.
Wow, I don't have. First of all, thank you very much, and it's really been.
Yeah, thank all of you. For sure.
Thank you for sticking around and for listening. Okay, endorsements. I have two. One, I've been researching recently for a demon story that takes place in Laguna Beach. So I went out to Laguna Beach, and I stayed at a place called the Laguna Riviera, which is this hotel that was built in back in the turn of the century, but in its current incarnation was built in the 1940s. So this would be like a place where like Victor Mature would go and like hang out on a balcony and watch the ocean. It was so cool and so very 50s, this place. So I really enjoyed that. So if you're in California and you're in Laguna Beach and you want a cool place on the ocean, you stayed at the Laguna Riviera. Blows my mind. Yes. Isn't it? Like I said, it's like, it feels like Desi Arnaz should be like walking through. Yeah.
Since we're old, that's all.
Yeah. That's exactly it. It has a certain mid-century feel to it. And you wake up in the morning and there's the ocean. That, and I've just been, speaking of mid-century, I've just been watching Friday the 13th, the original. Sean Cunningham's Friday the 13th. And it's so strange, that one, to watch that as though you've never heard of what came after. So that's an interesting experience if you want to just like sort of wipe your mind out and watch it. It's very wild to sort of experience that again. So those are my two endorsements.
Well, since we had our special guest commentator here, Mr. Elmore, I'm going to endorse the Pink Lady episode of and anything else he's been in.
Excellent. Excellent.
I primarily, first things first. On my way up here from Austin, my wife and I downloaded Nightmare and Dreamscapes by Stephen King.
Yeah.
It's a collection of short stories. It was an audiobook. Particularly one on there that I love more than anything is a story called Home Delivery, which Stephen King reads it himself, and it's just a thing of beauty. I love that. It's my favorite Stephen King thing that exists, and it's something. I love Colorado, but I for some reason I don't like driving on mountain roads. Go fig. But my parents would play this CD or tape, as it was. It was a tape. It was that long ago for me, and for some reason this would calm me down. Oddly enough,
wow.
Stephen King's zombie story would calm me down while we were driving on snowy mountain roads. And so listening to that, driving into Colorado was such a nostalgia trip, especially on Halloween weekend. Second thing, as he was saying earlier, I have been doing my comic Halloween Man now literally, as of today, 15 years. And the trajectory of doing that has changed my life. It's the whole reason I'm here. It's the reason why I know all the people that I'm on this stage with who are like family to me. Even though I don't always see them in person, I speak to them every week. And it's just been amazing. And this has been one of the best weekends of my entire life. And this has just been wonderful. But the capitalist side of that, please go to my table, buy Halloween Man.
Yeah.
Celebrate consumerism. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And that wraps the Castle of Horror podcast live, first ever live.
And thanks, Scott. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, Scott is our sound man in the back. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.